I kind of moved past the word visualization because I think it kind of conjures up a little bit too much of a spiritual association. The word that's used in science is called mental rehearsal. In mental rehearsal, there's two types of mental rehearsal. There's what's called internal mental imaging, which means you're in the scene as the first person experiencing it. And then there's called external mental imaging, which is you're observing yourself in the scene. Turns out that when you are actually in the first person and not the third person, that action of rehearsing what you're doing produces the strong biological change. Now let's talk about this. You can take a group of people that have never played the piano before, and you can do a functional brain scan on them, and then you can teach them one-handed scales and chords. And they'll practice those chords 2 hours a day for 5 days. At the end of 5 days, they grow a whole new set of circuits on the opposite side of the brain. Well, that makes sense. You learn something new. Learning is making new synaptic connections. You get your body involved with some instruction. When you get your body involved, you're going to have a new experience. Experience enriches the brain. You pay attention to what you're doing. You got to pay attention. You got to stay present. And if you repeat it over and over again, firing and wiring, you assemble new networks of neurons equal to your experience. Nothing new there. But you can take a group of people and you can have them close their eyes, do a brain scan on them before the experiment, 5 days later do a brain scan after. And for 2 hours a day, they mentally rehearse playing those scales and chords. At the end of 5 days, they grow the same amount of circuits in their brain as the people actually physically doing the exercise. So what's the relevance? Number one, when you're truly focused and you're truly paying attention, your brain does not know the difference between what's going on out there and what's going on in here. So the thought becomes the experience, and the brain looks like it's been playing the piano for the last 5 days, but they never lifted a finger. Now, from a biological standpoint, our brains are a record of the past. They're an artifact of everything we've learned and experienced to this moment. When we prime the brain to change its circuitry before the experience, now the brain is no longer a record of the past, it's now a map to the future. And so as we warm up those brain circuits, it's more easy for us to slip into a supernatural behavior. If you take those people and you set them in front of the piano, and they've never played the piano before, but they've been mentally rehearsing for the last 5 days, they'll play those scales and chords. Like magic, they just learned how to do it just by changing their internal state. Take a group of men. You can have them close their eyes and for an hour a day mentally rehearse doing bicep curls over and over again, and they add an emotional component called harder, stronger, more intense, and they put themselves in that first person internal mental image. At the end of 2 weeks, they have a 13.5 increase in muscle strength, and they've never performed the activity. Not only is the brain changed to look like the experience has already occurred, now the body has changed by thought alone. The body looks like it's been working out for the last 2 weeks. So then, the power of mental rehearsal, of imaging, primes the brain and body to look like the future has already occurred. And when you set the extent of your limit, and you can image what you can do even further than what's normal, then you are stepping into the unknown. And of course, then your body is going to follow your mind because the experience has already happened. You know, the challenge behind all of this is that people have to understand that there is a journey that they have to take. In other words, 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, beliefs, perceptions, attitudes, behaviors that function like a subconscious computer program. 95% of who we are is a habit. And it's programmed in the body. If you keep doing something so many times, the body knows now how to do it better than your brain. So if that's 95% of who we are, the body becomes the mind, and most of the time people are unconscious. So they're unconscious to the way they think. They're unaware of how they act, what they look like. They're not even aware of what they're feeling because it just feels like their normal self. So then to go from the old self to the new self, you got to cross a river. And so then the moment they step into that river of change, The body has been conditioned to be the mind. The body doesn't like the uncertainty. It would rather cling to its guilt. It would rather cling to its unworthiness, to its fear. So then, the moment the body starts feeling uncomfortable and it's been conditioned to be the mind, it starts sending signals back to the brain. And the brain starts going, you start tomorrow, this isn't really going to work for you, no it doesn't, it's not the truth, or you're a failure, you're too much like your mother, you'll never change, this doesn't feel right. That's the body trying to unseat us, and if we respond to that thought or that voice as if it's true, that thought, that same thought leads to the same choice, leads to the same behavior, creates the same experience, produces the same emotion, and then we say, oh, this feels right. Well, no, that feels familiar. Going from the old self to the new self is the neurological, is the biological, is the chemical, the hormonal, genetic death of the old self. But we don't want to white knuckle it when we're in that unknown, we're in that void. The question is, what thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What do you want to put your attention behind? What behaviors do you want to demonstrate today in one lifetime? The act of rehearsing your behaviors begins to install the circuits in your brain, priming your brain for the future. And if you keep installing the hardware over and over again, the hardware is going to become a software program. And who knows, you may start thinking like an unlimited person. You may start feeling and behaving like a healthy person. And then, of course, can you teach your body emotionally what that future is going to feel like before it's made manifest? That means you don't wait for your healing to feel wholeness. You don't wait for your wealth to feel success. You don't wait for the mystical moment to feel awe. That's the old model of reality of cause and effect. Waiting for something outside of us to change how we feel inside of us. And when we feel better inside of us, we pay attention to whoever caused it. What if it doesn't happen? Then we spend the majority of our life in lack, waiting for it to happen. The quantum model of reality is about cause and effect. The moment we start feeling whole, our healing begins. The moment we're in awe of life, we're going to have a mystical experience. The moment we feel worthy and abundant, our wealth is coming. The moment we feel empowered, we're moving towards our success. The moment we're in love with life and in love with ourselves, our world changes. That's causing an effect. So the model then of change is becoming conscious of our unconscious self. And the word meditation literally means to become familiar with. So if 95% of who we are is hardwired and conditioned, you got to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. You got to become aware of how you act and what your habits are. So familiar, so conscious of it, that you would never go unconscious again. And then you got to look at those emotions that keep you anchored to the past and decide, do these emotions belong in my future? And I think that most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality. It doesn't work. We literally have to become someone else. So then as you cross the river and you say, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? What behaviors do I want to demonstrate? If you keep firing and wiring those circuits over and over again, it's going to begin to become familiar to you. And if you keep cultivating elevated emotional states, just like you cultivate fear or guilt, if you keep doing that enough times, it's going to begin to become familiar to you. And over time, you change and transition. And so we use the model of meditation because the whole purpose of meditation is to get beyond the analytical mind. And what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. So then we have ways in different meditations to teach our students how to change their brainwaves from that high alert beta brainwave state that switches on when a person's in chronic stress, to be able to regulate and change their brainwaves, to teach them how to go from focusing on matter and objects and things to focusing on nothing, to focusing on space, to go from a narrow focus to an open focus. And when that occurs, brainwaves begin to slow down. And if they're sensing space and they're not analyzing and thinking, different compartments of the brain that were once subdivided because of the hormones of stress, because they're shifting their attention to their kids, to their wife, to their job, to their problems, to their cell phone, to their emails. Each one of those things is a neurological network in our brain. Keep doing that, the brain starts firing incoherently. When the brain's incoherent, we're incoherent. When the brain isn't working right, we're not working right. So by regulating and changing brainwaves and teaching our students how to do it, in time then the brain starts to synchronize.